Welcome to the Signal Pres podcast.
Welcome to the Signal Pres podcast, the place for you to learn, to grow, and to get connected to the body of Christ here at Signal Pres. I am Joey Sherrod. I am one of your hosts.
And I am Abby Hutto. I am also one of your hosts.
And this is another first-time episode here at Signal Pres. We're 28 episodes in, I believe, but who's counting? Not me. That's right. And
our avid listeners who are sad we took last week off.
Exactly. Yes. That one person.
That one person who went to the beach and ruined it for all of us.
That's right. Exactly. But for the last 27 episodes, you have had the chance to hear exclusively from Signal Pres members, but we have secured the first person willing to be on our podcast outside of Signal Pres. It is my dear friend, Mark Grapengater. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mark is a dear friend, but I'm going to let you talk about yourself. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your family, where you're from, what life is like for you, your vocation, all the things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It is early still, so
Mark is still on mountain time.
Yeah, so we live in Denver. Well, let's start there. We live in Denver. My wife is Stacy. I have 3 kids, Michael, Evelyn, and Joshua, who are hopefully still sleeping across the street. So we live in Denver. We have Stacy and I met in St. Louis. I'm from Oklahoma originally. She's from Wisconsin, and we worked in Atlanta for about 5 years as a pastor down there before heading out to Denver to plant. And, COVID happened, and that disrupted a lot of things. Yeah. When we came out of that, we found that we had been planted in the neighborhood. And so we get to love and serve our neighbors in pretty unique ways. So we work for the church, but outside of the church, we do the ministry called the Table Project, where we're providing a place at the table of God's grace. So we get to pastor people who don't have a pastor. We get to extend hospitality. We get to love and serve our neighborhood. And then we get to equip and inspire churches in the ministry of hospitality as well. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hospitality,
Yes.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Well,
you looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, I can talk about Mark for days.
I can talk about Joey for days.
Maybe that should be its own podcast.
We could do that.
But perhaps, I could talk about how he's been a pantry chef in a Michelin-star restaurant. Mm-hmm. I could talk about he's a sommelier. But
is that how you say that word?
That is how you say it.
Okay. Well, there was a lot of debate about that.
Oh, yeah?
Sommelier.
Sommelier.
I mean, yeah. You could emphasize it more.
But, being a sommelier involves, various things. Learning how to identify wine, even like blindfolded at times, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I could do all that.
Yeah. But could you do it? Could you do it with a Skittle?
Oh, yeah.
The flavor of the Skittle.
I bet you could. Close your eyes. No,
let's do that. Yeah. As long as it is a Skittle.
So we are going to
be able to do that.
Get to know Mark a Skittle. So something you should serve at every party, I believe, is Skittles. They're just, there you go. So much fun. Packaged in a little packet. So we did not, I was going to prank him and give him sour Skittles, but
Ooh, those are
it's
delicious.
Just regular. Okay.
Right,
he's picking out his color. Okay, let's see. His eyes are closed.
His eyes are closed. We did not have to blindfold him.
What flavor do you believe you received?
Oh,
you did.
Boom.
You're doing great. So now you get to pick an orange question.
What region, though?
Valencia.
How long has it been aged in my office?
These are a 21.
That's right. I think it was Shadow Side. Yes.
I cannot name wines.
East facing, I believe that was, yes.
But I could memorize a lot of info about them. Let's see. These are all like deep questions. The orange ones.
Orange is deep.
I just read
now
through
we
the
know.
red ones. I was like, no, I can do this. My favorite TV shows. I think it's not underrated, I think, amongst our age.
Mm-hmm.
But in the cultural milieu that we're in now, Seinfeld just does not get the love.
Yes.
And I know maybe it's a go-to for us, but I do find it very interesting that Friends was picked up amongst the younger generations, and not Seinfeld, because Seinfeld always resonates.
Yeah.
I could have a Seinfeld quote ready to go.
Yeah,
like that.
It made me feel really old when I hired my first intern, and I was like, "Have you watched Seinfeld?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, "I will buy you a Netflix subscription
just so you can do some research.
So you can watch it." And then he turned and looked at me and he goes, "Who doesn't have a Netflix subscription?" I was like, "Oh, okay. Thanks, dude."
Cross-generational ministry at its finest.
Yeah.
All right. Seinfeld it is. Well, there's no segue from Seinfeld to my next question, so I will just abandon that and dive.
There is the Chinese restaurant or the...
Never mind.
I was going to say, there's so many food references. These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Yes. The marble rye, the black and white cookie.
That's right. So many.
Well, that is the segue into this question.
There you go. We'll get it for you, Joey.
Thank you. Get by with a little help from my friends. Mark, your vocation is kind of the convergence of two things that might initially appear distinct to people, but are actually really quite integrated even at their beginning. So your experience in the restaurant industry and your love of cooking, and also your vocation as a pastor, teaching elder in the EPC. Tell us about kind of how all of that unfolded and intertwined. And
yeah, thank you. The longer-esque story is that I studied abroad in the middle of college in Costa Rica, and one of the few TV show or networks that were still in English in Costa Rica, and I could let my brain relax, was the Food Network. So I watched a lot of Food Network in Costa Rica. And I couldn't go and eat any of that food because it didn't exist. Emerald he didn't have a restaurant in Costa Rica, maybe a surprise. And so when I got back to the U.S., I began to go, okay, I've watched all these shows. I want to start trying to cook these things. When I moved to Chicago for seminary, it was the first time that I lived outside of a dorm, so I had to prepare my own food. And it was one of those, I'm a hobbyist at heart, so I'm always adding a new. I was hoping for that. That's a red Skittle question.
Sorry.
But, oh well. But I couldn't afford to go and do a bunch of things. In seminary, like, you still have to eat in the middle of seminary. And so I was find. I can't go eat at these restaurants. Yeah, everyone has to eat. So the opposite of the children's book. So I went to, I said, I can buy the food. I just can't I can't go out to a restaurant to be able to do it. So I started cooking on my own and really spending a lot of extra time in the kitchen because that was my decompression time. And then when I graduated from seminary, I wanted to stay in Chicago. I got an internship at a church that was short-lived and was still really trying. I had a great community there, great friends, and a friend of mine had taken me to a restaurant called Bon Soiree. And Bon Soiree was about a 22, 24-seat restaurant, very small in Chicago. And he said, "This is going to be the best meal of your life." And I was like, we'll see about that. And it's still one of the most standout meals. We never saw a menu. I never saw a bill. And Kevin was very generous in that way. And over the course of the next year, I got to know this restaurant, and Shin Thompson, the chef, hired me on. It eventually was a Michelin-star restaurant. And I learned so much about food and cooking and hospitality. And even now, every year when we do an auction dinner, it's a multi-course dinner, I'm going back to how did we do it in Chicago? What did that look like? What were some of the techniques and all of that? But also, how do we warmly serve and invite people? It's not every restaurant, especially one with a Michelin note, star or whatever, that you get to know the chef in that kind of a way. So that was really kind of where a lot of it started. And then as Stacy, as we kind of our marriage really began to take shape, we realized that she worked front of the house typically growing up, and I've always worked back of the house. And so
and tell our listeners what those terms mean.
Sure. Front of the house is all the wait staff.
Yeah.
And they provide.
I mean, I know, but they don't know.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. Tell our listeners. The first listener, Joey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then back of the house is all food prep stuff, and usually there's somewhat of a division. I mean, there can be some pretty snippiness between,
like Downton
front,
Abbey, like upstairs and downstairs.
Never watched that, but
what?
So like The Bear. Have you seen The Bear? That's my Downton Abbey. So. Great Chicago show as well. And so Stacy knows how to manage all the details of what needs to, like, table settings or chairs or thinking about the kids. And I just get to think about the food and the preparation of that as I'm stressing out about all the things, trying to keep that down. So when our marriage was taking shape and when we got our first pastoral call, that started to be a focus of what we did. We invited people over. We had them into our home. Our home was not large, and we would fill it regularly with people, and we loved doing that. That was the hardest part of the pandemic for us, was not being able to fill our home. And so when we stepped out from that role in Atlanta to plant a church, we knew that hospitality was going to be at the center of that. And then we began to dig into the biblical aspects of hospitality. It is always required when Paul writes out his requirements for elders that they would be showing hospitality, or it's mentioned right before that of something that all believers should be doing in their lives. And hospitality comes from the Greek word philoxenia, 2 words, familial love and stranger. So it's the familial love of a stranger as a direction and a purpose. It's love to love a stranger so they become family. And so I have begun to see it just flowing through all of Scripture. It kind of carries the weight of everything that we do in our lives, whether it's truly just food prep and sitting down at the table and having a meal together, or whether it's how we approach a situation and being generous to others and loving them, so that hopefully our relationship is more established than when we start.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
And you've already hit on it, but this idea of feasting throughout Scripture, that it's we had the opportunity to sit with Mark for a little bit last night and hear from him, but that it starts in a garden full of food and it ends at the table at the supper of the Lamb. And so it's a story that's bookended by feasting and joy and all of the things that come with that. So as you think about like the biblical story of hospitality, what's something that stands out to you as maybe one of your favorites or something you'd like to share with us?
I think one of the stories that needs to be restored to our imaginations as Christians, particularly, and it's one of the essential ones. As we were starting our church, we were going, what's going to encapsulate the image of what we're doing? And it's the story of David and Mephibosheth. And I mentioned this last night, 2 Samuel 9. David is finally, his kingdom is settled. He's not fighting any wars. He's coasting at this point. And he says, is there anyone left over from the house of Saul? And you're kind of going like, this could set something up for David to really get some final revenge on Saul for how he was treated. But then David remembers his covenant that he made with Jonathan, and it's really this kindness question. And so they say, actually, there is someone, Jonathan's son, your best friend's son is over here, and he was injured. His feet were crippled as he fled the castle during the raids at the end of 1 Samuel, if I'm remembering correctly. And so he's been living in obscurity. And so he says, bring him in. And Mephibosheth has no idea what's about to happen. And David says, Mephibosheth lays down on the floor and says, I'm a dog before you. And he just says, no. You are a guest at my table. We're going to restore the land. We're going to restore your possessions that your grandfather had. And you're going to eat at the king's table always. And this seems like, keep your enemies closer kind of a thing. But really it's this restoration that takes place And he says 3 times, you shall eat at the king's table, you shall eat at the king's table. And the word hospitality is not mentioned in that passage, but you see it enacted out. And I think that's one of the things as we think about the biblical story is that, we seminarians were taught to do word studies and all of those things. But the Greek philoxenia is only used like 4 or 5, I think 5 times in the New Testament. And so you just don't see that. You can't just look at the word. You have to look at the themes. And you start to see that, like particularly in 2 Samuel 9, like hospitality immediately has table legs on it, quite literally. And David goes on from there to just continue to extend that grace that's found at the table for Mephibosheth.
One of the things you talked about last night that I loved, this connection between like the same word for hospitality and the root word for hospital are connected. So like our hospitality heals.
Yes.
And I love that story because it is the beginning of the healing, not just for Mephibosheth, but also for David to love your enemy in that way. And it heals him.
We have so many cultural stories of people who are, hot button like Chick-fil-A years ago when they were in their controversy over same-sex stuff. Like there's a story of a guy who's like, all right, I'm going to sit down with Dan and Kathy. He's like, I didn't agree with everything. And he was a same-sex attracted man. But he was like, but I get where he's at. And he's genuine in who he is. And we're able to have a real conversation. And we get to... The thing about sitting down at a table is, like, I think I said, there's forks and knives, and we've established rules and rituals that we just don't stab each other at the table, right? Like, there's an incredible vulnerability.
Absolutely.
There's vulnerability both on what has been served. It could be poison. There's all sorts of rituals around that growing up, or in ancient time. Not in my life. Not growing up.
You had a taster at your house to make sure you didn't get poisoned?
There's a lot.
Those
a lot
Tulsa
of
streets, baby.
Yeah, Tulsa is rough, I'll tell you. But in the ancient, there are all sorts of rituals around how food was served, and then what you did to be able to make sure everybody was safe, because it was an incredibly vulnerable position for people to be in. And so you get to sit down and you get to be human with one another, and you get to do one of the most intimate things outside of the bedroom, and that's eat together. In the ancient Near East, I think it's Norman Worsba argues that it's actually the most intimate thing that is done between two humans is eating. So it's one of those it's one of those opportunities that we can really be. And then the healing side, I told the story last night, but a friend of mine had recently moved back to Tulsa, and his wife tragically ended her life. And he had been there maybe 4 or 5 months. He'd lived there previously, so he had a community near him. But he said, people would bring food over to our house, and a lot of casseroles. That's what, Midwest generally in Tulsa. And he said, I don't begrudge that. I'm incredibly grateful for that. But what would have been even more wonderful is that if someone stayed and ate dinner with us, because we had the food provided, but it was still just me and the kids, and there was an empty chair there.
Isn't that interesting? How much we long to be? Because my husband travels a lot, and I hate to eat alone. I will just show up at other people's houses with my food and be like, "Can I eat here?"
We don't know each other that well, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, I think what you were saying. I do think that helps just fill out what hospitality is. Because oftentimes when we think about it, I mean, you even talked last night with us about the difference between hospitality and entertaining, right? And the vulnerability of both hosts in your friend's life, him as welcoming someone else into his home, into his pain, and then the person who's bringing the food having the vulnerability of entering into that and not knowing what to say. That is biblical hospitality, not the centerpiece and the spread. And I think that's borne out within Scripture, right? Those are the kind of things that we see people. I love how when you were talking last night about Acts 16 and 18, how the first thing that these converts did, Lydia, And then the Philippian jailer, as they said, come into my home. Yes. You've shared with me life. Now I want you to share my life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's an amazing picture. I think for me, it's like when my eyes were open to the power of hospitality and all the various themes of it, we began to see like, oh, they're opening their home to Paul after their conversion. They're welcoming them. They're the first position in the church was Stephen, elected official, and he was a table servant. Deacon means, waiter. And that's what he did. Like you start to see all of these moments with it. So, yeah.
It's beautiful. Well, let's talk more about that. When we think about hospitality and the church, those are often concepts that seem to like sit next to each other in our imaginations, and maybe they overlap slightly. When we think about hospitality in the church, we think about greeters, we think about, a visitor center or things like that. But the biblical picture that you've painted for us there, and even the moment in Christian worship where, that is, the culminating moment of our worship service is a table where people are invited to come and sit around. So talk to us about how you've learned and grown in thinking about hospitality and the church, and what you've seen this look like in your ministry in your neighborhood in Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah. Denver, Colorado. So
sorry. This is my best friend, Mark. I don't know where he lives.
That's fine. That's my own personal point of pride. Littleton's great.
It's the burbs.
I'm thinking of Brandon, so that's fine. So I'm a huge advocate of weekly communion for a number of reasons. Like if it's the first Sunday of the month, that means if we're regular at attending church, in America these days, we're going to church about twice a month, no matter whether we're, Signal Mountain or Atlanta or Denver. Denver's even less. It's once a month. And so the opportunity to do the thing that Jesus told us to do when we get together we just don't always have that opportunity in what our daily lives look like now. So doing communion every week invites the church to participate in the life of Christ, which Alexander Schmemann says is for the life of the world. And so we become communion of the saints. We become this life offered to the rest of the world. And all of our other meals then begin to flow out of the table that Jesus sets for us. So last night I talked about, he culminates what he has done in his earthly ministry by eating the Last Supper with his disciples. But it's really just a reflection and an echo of all the other meals that he's been having all along the way. Luke's gospel is Jesus is either at a meal, leaving a meal, or headed to a meal. And Jesus, so much of his life was lived around tables, and he didn't really discriminate with who he was eating with either. So it was Pharisees and tax collectors and prostitutes and sinners and his disciples, and he did it very, very regularly. So we as a church, I think, have a really rich history biblically, as well as we could dive into church history on it as well, of showing hospitality to the world and it being a healing thing for the world as well. And so for me, when we try to think of what is the church's role individually, institutionally, Luke 14 stands out as the parable of the great banquet. And so in the parable of the great banquet, Luke's telling the story of Jesus is at a meal, I do believe, with a Pharisee, and he is sitting there and they're having this great time, and he's like, hey, Jesus pipes up. Jesus enters often in as a guest and then becomes the pseudo host while he's there. Yeah. And you're like, he's just magical at being able to do that. And I think that's an okay word to use. So he enters in and he's like, hey, man, next time you throw a party, like invite all the people that can't pay you back. Like, let's not discriminate. Like, let's not make this a social standing kind of a thing. You should invite the cripple and the lame and all those. And some guy, who's had his fill at this point's like, blessed are all those who will eat in the, the supper of the Lamb, and the great banquet in the sky. And Jesus is like, all right, buddy, calm down. Let me tell you a story. And he says, there's this host, this great master of the banquet, inviting everyone to come and celebrate, and everybody makes their excuses for why they can't come. And in the end, he's telling the servant to go out. He's sending them back out and back out. Gather everyone. Bring everyone in from the highways and the byways. Everyone needs to come into my house. I want it full of people. Everyone deserves to be here. And we look at all the different characters of where we place ourselves in parables all the time. And I just had never considered the servant as one of the actual characters in the story. This is Jesus' brilliance. And when we look at the role of the church, we see this inviting servant as one who is supposed to be going out and calling everyone in. And there's going to be people with their excuses, and we continue to invite them. And then we look around, who else is out there? Let's fill Christ's house. And so our role as the church is inviting people to come now and feast with Christ and have this kingdom life, this fullness of life that we find in Christ.
That's great.
It's such a beautiful invitation to all of us, because so much of like what you've talked about last night and this morning is just this idea of like hospitality heals, that as we invite people to the table, there is a healing moment that happens. And oftentimes it's healing between us that then becomes healing between us and God. Yeah. And so it's this key thing. And I love this idea of hospitality. And I'm sure most of our listeners are thinking, I want to be more hospitable. But we have barriers. Right. And a huge barrier that we named last night is just intentionality, like actually just putting it on the calendar and looking at our schedule and saying, this is important enough that we want to schedule it. Yep. But I think the other barrier that I'd love to hear from you is so many of us don't even know where to start, or feel like there's just so many obstacles we don't know how to get over those. So if you had some hacks or some tips that you could share with us, what would you share?
Definitely, as you said, being intentional about it is number one. Even my wife and I, in our lives that's built around this, we have a weekly meeting, not during the summer because the kids are home, but we have a weekly meeting where we go, who are we inviting? We have lists of people that we want to come over. Oh, we invited them previously. We want to make sure we invite this family this time. So we're always thinking through that very, very intentionally. And then we're going, what can we do? Our life is crazy right now. We got to run Michael over here for baseball. Evelyn has dance. Joshua has soccer, and it's all on the same day, or it's spread out, or whatever it may be. And we're going, okay, this week we have enough energy to order pizza. And grab some beers on our way home. And so we can do one family over this. So, I have a full day to be able to hang out around the house. I got to mow the lawn anyway. I'm going to be around. I'm going to fire up the smoker. I'm going to fill it up with stuff, and we're going to invite several families over. And so we very intentionally plan on what we can do. And that's my first tip, and what I say on how to throw one party is keep it simple. Do what you can do. Don't overstretch yourself. Maybe you want to try out a new dish, but is now the time? Know yourself a little bit in that, because we struggle with this, to remember that we are human and we're not infinite in our time and our abilities. So we go, what can we do? Who do we want to have over? So again, that intentionality, both for ourselves and for others. And then ultimately people come over because you've invited them. They want to spend time with you. As I said last night, conversely, they don't say no because of you. And so that's the number one tip that I have, is to do what you can do. Keep it simple. Know your own limitations on what you can do so that you're not stressed out. Forgetting all my other tips and tricks, but maybe it's like Crockpot. We're not huge Crockpot family, but we have a couple that we can bust out because we know we're going to be gone all day. We can start the thing in the morning and it's going to be ready at night, or we can throw it in the morning before. Somebody had breakfast for dinner party last night, and that is like our Shrove Tuesday is just pancakes. So Fat Tuesday in England and Shrove Tuesday they eat pancakes, and so we do pancakes and bacon and syrups and all the toppings and things, and we invite people over and they love it. It's really not about, again, like the cultural hospitality of entertainment and making sure people are wowed in what you're doing is not the call of the church. The church is to build and offer relationships with one another, and so that you're able to be with them and have the things ready. So that's where keeping it simple is really more. It's more about offering yourself than some spectacular meal.
So, I think that's really freeing.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned, this is my hack, is I only clean 1 day a week.
There you go.
And I actually literally had a conversation with your wife about this. I was like, if we're going to be friends, you have to be okay with my house being messy. Like, I mean, that's kind of real life. Like, I clean 1 day a week. So I know my toilets have been cleaned once that week.
That's pretty good.
Before they come over, I wipe like a Clorox wipe, but that's it. And if I know that, I'm just like, you know what, it's fine.
Again, having those hacks of like, okay, I know when, and you said when you
I
planned
clean
your
on
party,
Saturday mornings.
you said we're going to do a Saturday night party, and so I know my house is clean that day, and you can go through and wipe real quick.
Yeah.
And you
It's
can
usually clean till Monday,
things.
actually. So I have like 3 days. Don't come over on Friday.
It
tells a lot about your schedule otherwise. I'm concerned. I want to see a doctor.
Yeah, but there is that. There is that like there's a space between like super entertaining and like complete dishevelment, right?
Yeah.
And this is not in response to you.
Just
You're
call
looking
me
at
No,
right now.
no. But I'm just saying, like, I think, like, if that's the window, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to go above the window because, like, it becomes a burden even on the guest, right? Like, if we want to have a culture of hospitality here at Signal Pres, like, the bar we want to set is not, you will only see the best part of me.
Yeah.
Right? You will only see me when I have convinced you that this perfection that I am presenting to you is effortless, right? We want people to see us, like we want them to see us,
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if like we're about to fall off the bottom of that, the question is like, what in my life is preventing me from opening up myself, like, so maybe I am showing too much hospitality, right? Or maybe this season is, just not the season right now. Maybe there's things that I need to do, like cleaning my bathrooms once a week, having a schedule like that, that I need to put into my life so that I can begin to do this. And that's where we start.
I think that's the vulnerability piece how much are you letting people see? And knowing that they're stepping in with vulnerability also, because there is the vulnerability on both the guest and the host, both sides of it. Either party could be taken advantage of at any moment in their stay. And then you have the other thing I forgot. Knowing that we're human, well, I think I was going to tell the story of we were hosting our first Friendsgiving in Denver. So a lot of people we just met, and we're going to have they're coming over on Saturday, and I think it was Monday. I went out. One of the guys grabbed a beer with him, came home for dinner, used the bathroom. Toilet sounded weird. Went over, grabbed food, sat down at the table. About 30 minutes later, my daughter comes walking down. She's like, 2.5 at this point, or maybe just 3. And she goes, "There's water." And we're like, "I'm sorry, what?" "There's water in the hallway." And both of us shoot up from the table. And water is a theme in our marriage life, in our homes. And so we ran in there, and she had stuffed a lot of toilet paper in the toilet previously. And so when the toilet sounded funny, it just wasn't, it didn't show a clog, but there was a clog. So for 30 minutes, the toilet had been overflowing. Oh my gosh. And so the whole entryway to our house had to be ripped up. The basement had to be ripped up. And we have people coming in 4 or 5 days at this point. And we have everything's purchased already. We're ready to rock and roll. And we were like, well, I guess we're inviting people into our mess because we want to be able to be invited into their mess as well.
Yeah.
And so this is the reality of who we are in this moment. So,
Well, you even talked about that a little bit last night when you said like hospitality is saying like, I'm not okay and you're not okay, but we can be not okay together.
Exactly.
And in that way we can minister to one another.
Well, and it frees you up. Like, something's going to go wrong in cooking, and that's how you roll and adapt with it and what's, paying attention to it. You give that little 15 minutes extra at the beginning for you to sit down and to become a part of the party yourself. Give some buffer zone so when things don't go perfectly planned, and then you can go like, hey, it didn't turn out this time, but we're here and we're all gonna choke it down. The National Lampoons when they cut the turkey and it kind of explodes open, and they're all gnawing on it, and the next thing, we're all in this together.
That's great.
And then you can order Domino's.
That's right.
Ultimately, and then you get to tell a story.
That's right.
That's right. That's great. That's great. All right. Well, Mark, thanks for sharing all this with us.
Absolutely.
We're going to invite you to be even more vulnerable with us as we talk to you about 5 questions. So question number 1, since we're in the middle of an emphasis this year about helping people get to know their Bibles better and having that to be a living part of their relationship with Jesus, what does reading the Bible look like for you these days?
Yeah, it is the Psalms first and foremost, reading through those about once a month, and that is the main discipline that I have, being able to do that, and so have a reading plan for morning and evening. We try to keep each other accountable, even if I'm not texting
we text
what
each other
verse
we like.
I'm reading have stood out to me that day. And then I try to read through a gospel regularly as well. I need to be reminded of Jesus' life and who he is. If I'm not letting him host me in his story, then I will not do that. And being a freelance pastor out there, it would be very ezy for me to forget that and just go about all the things I need to do, as it is for any pastor's life. But then then usually I will pick something else and just read through it on a I don't have a schedule for it, but it's like, I need to read through Ephesians. So I'm just going to sit down and read through that book, or not often through the Old Testament, but more so in the New. I'll just read through a book at a time. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
So is there a scripture you'd like to share with us that's been particularly meaningful to you, either now or in the past?
Particularly in the Psalms, we went through it was a hard transition from Atlanta to Denver. There were a lot of challenges in that, and I was really questioning what God was doing in our lives in that time, and why we had to go through all of this. And so we're living with my folks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is I was 36 at that point, every 36-year-old's dream.
That's right.
To move into their parents' home. Thankfully, they didn't have a basement. So we were there, and my son, we put him in swim lessons, and we said, because you gotta still do life, and so I'm sitting there really questioning why this transition is so challenging, and I'll pull out my phone, read the Psalms, the appointed Psalms for the day, and Psalm 66 came up, and it begins fairly innocuous. I'm going to praise God for who He is and all the things that He's done. I'm like, yeah, and then it gets to verse 5 or 6 in there, and he goes. The psalmist says, "You let men ride over our backs with their chariots and ride over our heads. And yet you brought me out to a place of abundance." And there's this turn in it. And he says, "So I will declare your praises in the temple. I will offer my offerings. I will make my sacrifices, and I will tell others about you. And that began to be kind of the theme of what we were doing as we moved to Denver to go like, we have experienced pain, we've experienced loss, and yet God is bringing us out to a place of abundance. And so we will continue to tell of his goodness and his grace. We will offer our worship, and we will invite other people into into worship of him as well. So
thank you. That's really beautiful.
thank you.
That's great. All right, another question we ask all of our interviewees is: you love Psalm 66, you love the Gospels, you love the Psalms, but what book of the Bible would you be least likely to read willingly?
That's great. That's you asked that before, and I've had time to think about it. And I want to say James, so I could be like Martin Luther. But, let's see.
An epistle of
Not
straw.
that. I don't know. Maybe numbers. Maybe is that cliche?
No,
Like-
is somebody else talking about numbers?
Yeah.
I think it was me.
Numbers.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I don't like numbers.
Numbers. Like it's fine. I would rather read Deuteronomy or Leviticus than Numbers.
Even Leviticus is better than numbers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. It's like I went into ministry not to deal with numbers.
Yeah.
Like I am not a math major. Not an engineer. Don't have me do math. So it's great.
Oh, man. So the next question we usually ask is, who has shown you the love of Jesus? But we want to tweak that just a little bit since you are our special guest. So who has shown you the hospitality of Jesus in your life?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think I've had a lot of grace to be able to say a lot of people have. I've had some great experiences in restaurants. I told the canless story of when we had lost our. When we had our first miscarriage, and there was this beautiful image of hospitality in the restaurant hosting us there and just giving us a phenomenal experience. We got to go out to Napa and experience hospitality really at some of the highest levels this past year. But the person that showed me the hospitality the most, of welcoming me, of treating me as family, has to be my wife. And she has been the most incarnate experience of grace, that when I'm surprisingly a very imperfect person, but she is there with me. She deals with all my neuroticism. I'm a 7 by Enneagram nature.
Oh, look at you guys over there.
That's right. I had you picked that. And we're always adding a hobby.
Yes.
And so Stacy's not surprised at that anymore. But like in stress, as we go to perfectionism.
Yes. But
like-
not the nice kind.
Oh, it is not nice. It is
Not the kind you want to welcome into your home.
It's not a good perfectionism. And I like my stress level. And so she knows how to diffuse it, or how to put up with it. And she does put up with it. And that is one of the most gracious things. She is, I don't want to say cheerleader, but she is like a great just encourager, really encourages, giving someone heart. And she gives that to me incredibly well. So
Something you said last night was deeply convicting, because you said hospitality starts with your own home and with the people you live with. Because I love to fill my house with people, but the person who bears the brunt of that is often my husband, who I'm like, we got to be fast. my one gets very cinched down on him, and he's so gracious and kind. That is something that I was like, you know what, that needs to be my primary focus is, am I loving my husband well, even as we host others?
Well, and I can't do hospitality without her.
Absolutely.
I'm not the detail person. When we do the auction party, I'm juggling 9 courses or so multiple elements on each thing. That's when the one helps.
Yes.
Because I am listing and I'm writing out, and I'm not just flying by the seat of my pants, but she's handling every other detail. So I can hyper focus on what I need to get done. And she stays why does she stay up with me when I'm frying chicken at like 2 a.m? And she's like, encouraging me, and we get to, you're doing great. What else do you need? And cursing alongside me with it as well. Why is it taking so long? Better be the best chicken you've ever made.
That's awesome.
I love it.
That's great. Last question. Mark, tell us something surprising about yourself that the people who don't know you very well wouldn't know about you.
This is my go-to story, but I just realized the connection that it has to the rest of my life. When I was about a year old and beginning to stand up and walk, my intestines were twisted. They began to tighten and cinch down, and I had it's called a malrotated valve. And so I couldn't keep anything down. I could drink water. My mom would give me what it would be like Ensure nowadays, but some watery mix of things to get me some nutrients. But that would come back out the entry. I'd throw it up. Projectile vomiting. As a 1-year-old, I could hit Joey from here. So.
Let's see if we can do it again.
Listeners, we're about 4 or 5 feet away from each other, just in case you're imagining this scenario.
I think I could do better. It was fully.
I think The Exorcist.
And my mom would take me to the doctor, and he'd go, "You're just, he's throwing up. He's a baby. Like, this is what they do. You're a crazy mom." And she was like, "No, this is different." And so finally, that was, I was born in August, and that's about when this started. And then it was it was after Thanksgiving. It was between Thanksgiving and Christmas when she took me in, and I'd lay on the linoleum floor. My stomach hurt so bad, couldn't keep anything down, and I threw up in the doctor's office. And he goes, "Oh, that's not right."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yep." And so they opened me up. I have a big scar across my belly, and they pulled out all my intestines. They untwisted them. They put them back in. And most people's run horizontally, right? How it would flow gravitationally. Mine go vertically now as they put them back in.
Did they do that by accident?
No, I think they did it on purpose.
They didn't turn you enough times clockwise to make sure it was.
I don't know. I never thought. Yeah, that's just what I know. So they fixed my belly. Stacy would say my belly is not fixed, but that's a different conversation.
Awesome.
So that is interesting. I don't know that I've ever met anyone who has vertical.
Anytime I see, I'll
vertical.
be randomly at a resort and see somebody with a scar on their belly, and I'm like, "Did you have that?" And he's like, "No, I just had my appendix out." I said, "Mine was too, but I have the whole thing."
All sorts of.
They're like, "Why are you asking me about my scars, weirdo?" So
all sorts of firsts on this podcast.
I know. It's the first time
someone with a belly with vertical running intestines. We've had a belly dancer on the
Maybe
podcast.
if you take up belly dancing.
Ooh. Nobody needs to see that.
Well, I often say one of my favorite things in the world is listening to Mark Grapengater talk about hospitality, and it's been true again.
Yes, this was fun. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Mark, a joy to have you with us. Thank you, listeners, for listening. You can check out Mark's ministry online, thetabledenver.org, and learn more about there. So
Great.
Than're for listening.
Fun to be here.
We're back on a weekly basis.
If somebody doesn't go back to the beach.
Hey, you're about to go on vacation, Abby.
Watch out. Watch out.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the Signal Prez podcast. I want to thank our extensive production team, beginning with Matt Broom, sound man extraordinaire.
And thank you to Hannah Sutton and Jackie Carpenter for helping us out with all of our technical difficulties and making it possible for you to listen to this podcast.